Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. So you probably see that there are some little postcards on some of the chairs. Those will go to the people who actually have those seats assigned later, so please don't take them off. And you probably have some in your seat, because I know when you get to your seat, you're going to see that you've already resubscribed, and these are thank yous for resubscribing, so thank you already, and enjoy your postcard. So, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. It's a rowdy bunch over here on the right. So our pre-concert talk is going to be a little bit different this evening than it normally is. I will share with you a little bit about the pieces, but probably at the concert only, because I wanted to spend this half hour introducing you to two really incredible musicians. Their names are Shahriyar Jamshidi and Raphael Weinroth-Browne, and they make up a group called Kamancello. And if you would, please join me in welcoming them to the stage. Welcome. Welcome. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to start by telling you a little story about how this happened. So, in an effort to, I'm very interested in the idea of unusual orchestral instruments joining the orchestra and combining instruments from other cultures with our Western instruments. And so I thought, gosh, I'd love to do a piece of music for a Middle Eastern instrument of some sort. And I wasn't even sure what kind. So I typed into Google, Middle Eastern instrument, Canada. And a bunch of names came up, but on the top of the list was Kamancello, this duo. So I looked at their website and I thought, wow, look at these guys. They're already doing this whole East meets West concept. They're already combining different genres of music and putting it together. I listened to their music and I thought, this stuff is fantastic. And so I just sent them an email. Dear Kamancello, my name is Robert Franz and I conduct the Windsor Symphony Orchestra, and I really like what you're doing. Have you ever considered doing it with the orchestra? And so Raphael wrote me back like within a day, and he's like, that sounds really cool. What do you have in mind? And I said, well, I love the music you're doing. Is there any way that we could add sort of an accompaniment to it, to sort of, combine it? And he's like, next day, he's like, let's do it. And this was like a year and a half, maybe almost 2 years ago now that this happened. And so, ladies and gentlemen, Kamancello came to be this evening in their first ever performance with a symphony orchestra. So, your microphone is right next to you, Raphael, and you're right to talk into. Let's start with this question. So that was my perception of how the conversation went. What did you think on the other side of the email?
I mean, I just thought that's really awesome. Can't wait to do it. And I was super surprised as well, because I remember we had just released our first album a month before, and I think we weren't expecting that, but we were super happy to hear from you. So,
now, how long have you guys been together as an ensemble? How did the ensemble begin?
Well, we started playing together in late 2014. We met in Toronto. We were both playing improvised music, just sort of in small venues with various musicians. And I heard about Shahriyar through a mutual friend who had played with him at one of these shows. And I always loved Kamanche, so I reached out, to see if we could get together and play music, and so we did. And we played for like 2 hours straight together and didn't really talk, and it was awesome. And so we decided, let's do a show. And then that led to another show, and so on and so forth, and now we're here.
Awesome. Well, I definitely want to talk about how you guys make music, but before we do that, Shahriyar, could we find out a little bit about this instrument that you're holding? Because this is an instrument that was new to me, and I bet is new to many folks that are here in the audience. Could you tell us a little bit about the instrument?
First of all, I'm very happy, and I appreciate the Windsor Symphony and Robert to just choose Kamancello for this night amazing music. Kamanche or spike fiddle, or in another word, Persian spike fiddle, it has a age about 1,000 years. And the first time in a poem 1,000 years ago, they mentioned the name of the Kamanche. Kamanche, it means a small arc bow. And this instrument is a bass bow string instrument in many countries in that area. And Robert mentioned Middle East, but Middle East is going down to Arabic area. But this instrument is from Middle East, border of the Middle East, to Central Asia. West Asia is a better word, but yeah, it's an old name. And they use this instrument in Armenia and in Azerbaijan. Is a well-known instrument. And in Turkey and in Kurdish region. And I'm originally Kurdish from west of Iran, and I play Kurdish music, and I do play the Kurdish music and Kamanche. But my background is studying, Iranian traditional music at a school. Is it any?
Fantastic. So I do want to ask you about this, but I want to also share with you one other thing. I just got a note. So this is our first time tonight, ladies and gentlemen. We are so hip here at the Windsor Symphony Orchestra. We are now Facebook Live, and so there's a whole world out there, 10, 20, 25 people who are additionally joining us and watching, and so I want to say hello to them. I also want to say that I hear you, and that if you have a question, we're going to take questions from the audience, our live audience, but if our Facebook Live audience has a question, it will come across my phone, and I will ask the question and get an answer for you as well. So look at that. We are all around the world, ladies and gentlemen, right here at the Capitol Theater. So you guys do, I think it's fair to say mostly, if not all, improvised sort of between yourselves. Talk to us a little bit about what that meant when you all of a sudden were thinking about joining the orchestra.
At first, I think it was a really challenging question. Okay, how are we going to take what we do, which is always spontaneous, and find a way to write it down and turn it into a scripted piece? And I think there was a feeling of, oh, can we do this? Because it's not the way we normally work. But where we started from was basically that Shahriyar had this piece for solo Kamanche, and he suggested it, and we all really liked it. So. And that was kind of the starting point of the piece. And I arranged the whole work and started by taking that and basically building around it and trying to create a more of a full work and trying to envision, what would the orchestra do? And then after that, find a way to build a multi-movement work around it with some themes from our recorded improvisations, which are on our CDs. And to kind of create a medley that would make sense, in a cohesive whole.
And the really cool thing is that there are moments in the piece that you'll hear tonight that they are scripted, they're playing notes that are written out with us, and then there are moments where we provide sort of a basis for them to improvise above us as we play along. Before we talk even more about these instruments or your histories, because you guys are really interesting people, even past the instrument as well, so many things that you've done. Could you guys play just a little bit for us so we can get the sound in our ear? So, Shahriyar, my first question is to you. Tell me how you got started playing this instrument. What drew you to playing the Kamanche?
It's a good question. I was born in Iran in Kurdish region, and 1978 we had a big changes in government, and everything just was changed. And I was age 7 that time, and until age 17 I didn't have any opportunity to go to the music school or any private schools. And at night, just I listened to the radio, Kurdish radio, Persian radio, and remember and study music in my mind. And later, on age 17, I started study Kamanche with a violinist, Persian violinist, in my city. And after 2 years, I just entered to the University of Tehran. And yeah, this is the first step of my music education. And later I studied with Ardeshir Kamkar, the famous Kamanche player, and other people, and the famous person, Moshtaba Mirzadeh. Yeah.
And tell us what a typical ensemble would be that holds Kamanche. Now, your Dylan Chamber Ensemble, is this a typical sort of ensemble that would have Kamanches joining them, or is this a different kind of setup, or what is the... Like, what makes up the orchestra that a Kamanche would play in an ensemble?
Kamanche has 2 different roles in orchestra. The first one is a solo performer, 3 positions at all. The first one, the solo, and the second one is accompaniment of the singer, because we have a solo singer and a solo instrument always accompany the singer. And the big role today is playing in orchestra, and we have a set of Kamanche now, 2 Kamanche and 1 Kamanche alto, and sometimes they have a bass Kamanche, like a classical orchestra. But usually they use a Kamanche, 1 Kamanche for 5 music instrument, with 5 music, like 2 tars, 1 santur, a drum, and Kamanche, and probably a single.
Okay, very interesting. So, Raphael, you are trained at the Glenn Gould School of Music in Toronto, and you have won a number of prizes as a classical cellist and have gone that route. But in addition, you have done some really amazing things. A couple of things that I thought were really pretty wild were this Gothic festival that you went to. I want to know a little bit about what a Gothic festival is. I've never been to one, but I know there were like 20 or 25,000 people at this thing, and so that's a lot of, like, tell us a little bit about this Gothic festival you were part of.
Okay, so this festival, it's called a Wave Gothic Treffen, and it happens in Germany, in Leipzig, every year. And yeah, I played at it twice, actually, in 2012 and 2016. And it's very different from what we're used to in Canada, because we don't have really any festivals here that are focused on these dark music subgenres, like metal, neo-folk, Gothic music, and sort of dark chamber and electronic styles. It's a very, very wide range of music, and they have some incredible venues there.
Is there a dark orchestra genre that I need to be exploring? This is really wild.
Maybe we're doing it right now.
Okay. And then you've also made some recordings, a couple of videos with Gowan from Styx. Tell us about that.
Yeah, that collaboration came through a friend of mine who's very connected in those sorts of gigs in Toronto with well-known rock and pop musicians, and so I just got recommended to join on for that, and it was a kind of a whirlwind day. There were just people, going into the studio really quickly, and then one take, and then the song was done. Okay, next song, and yeah, so it was pretty intense and very cool to just sort of be dropped into that.
What is a typical sort of performance year? You guys have been together for 5 years now. What kind of places do you perform in? How often do you perform? What kind of, tell us about the life of the ensemble outside of Windsor.
Well, we've played in a very wide variety of venues. When we started, it was more small places, but since we've played a lot of interesting festivals, Festival du Monde Arabe in Montreal, and the Tirgan Festival in Toronto, and the Aga Khan Museum Auditorium. We also played at the Cello Biennale in Amsterdam last year, which is a big cello festival that happens every 2 years. So it's been a real variety, but yeah, we're basically just doing our improvised sets for all of these shows.
Really cool. Do you guys have any questions for them about these instruments or about what we're about to partake together? Before we get. So one of the things that's interesting to me about this music, and I'd love to hear your take on it, is that it's going to feel a little bit different from a typical piece that we might play in a Windsor Symphony concert in two ways. One, your use of quarter tones. So I'd love to explore that a little bit about what that means. And two, the music is almost, it's layered. And so we do section after section after section. It gets sort of built upon, built upon, built upon. And what it does is it sort of plays with our sense of time in a way. Could we talk about the quarter tones first, and then I want to talk a little bit about the time? And what is a quarter tone, by the way?
Quarter tone is just in Persian music or widely in that area. They use it in Kurdish area, part of the Armenia, Azerbaijan. They changed it since the communist time. They changed it, and now it's fixed, and they don't have a quarter. And in Turkey as well. But in Iran and some Arabic country, we have a quarter tone in Iraqi places. And the quarter tone is not exact four, one from four. Is sometimes in different mode because we play modal music and magam music, and each magam has a different quarter tones. And yeah, that's it. For example, if you want to play shur, for sure we have a different quarter tone, and if you play sega mode, you should just add a small space. Yeah, it's higher than the shur, the quarter tone in sega.
So for our audience, like if you've got a piano at home and you go from C to C, there are 12 notes. And so those 12 notes, one to the next, is called a half tone or a half step between them. And so what we're talking about are there are notes, many, many, many more notes between each of those that sort of slide kind of in between. Could you give us just a little idea of that? Play a little bit and just give us so we can maybe hear a little.
For example, Charga mode, we play Charga mode tonight, and the second, just I play the mode with quarter note, not. Quarter two, quarter. If we temper the quarter note close to classical, the taste totally different.
Yes. So you hear the difference. Yes, it's really interesting. So here the question, Raphael, is for you is like what do you do to accommodate this quarter tone world? How does that work for you?
Well, I don't have frets, so I can play them. Yeah, basically, it's sort of like when you're having a conversation with someone. The way they speak and their personality is going to influence the way you speak. So it's quite easy to sort of fall into it. And I don't do it all the time, but when we play together, we have fast lines where we have those notes, then I usually do them. And then that way we're both doing the quarter tones. But when we play individually, I don't always do them because then we are speaking in kind of two different voices. And I think that's kind of interesting to have that duality happening.
Well, and in what was, I think, maybe for you and I in our initial conversations was this sort of slight, I don't want to say nervousness because I think that makes it way too dramatic, but just a slight trepidation, like, okay, well, how do we mix this with a symphony orchestra, which decidedly does not play in quarter tones, and sort of how that works. What was your experience, maybe from either of you, of feeling the sense of the sound of the quarter tones against what we were doing without the quarter tones? I mean, it doesn't happen all the time, so it's not like it's clashing, but the color is very interesting in how it happens. What was your experience this week?
I would say that it was pretty harmonious most of the time, and part of the reason is because their parts don't mimic what we're doing with the quarter tones, especially with ornamentation and embellishing the melody. They usually play around that, so that way the notes they're playing and the notes we're playing are harmonizing, and there isn't too much clashing going on. They're mostly kind of playing a frame around that stuff, I would say.
And Shahriyar, a question for you about this idea of ornamentation, these ornaments. Is this something that is in your ear from childhood, or is it something when you were at Tehran University studying music, you also somehow study ornamentation? I mean, to me, there's a connection between what you're doing and Baroque music, in that it's not just a simple, clear melody, but there are all of these extra sort of sounds, these extra ornaments that are between the notes. How did that... Is that because of growing up hearing it, or something you studied, or both?
That's true. Kurdish people living with music and dance, and it's part of our culture, because all people, they're singing. And we know poem well, and yeah, it's part of our culture. And we just document music in our, our mind, and memorize music. And when I was child, yeah, just listen to music, and the Kurdish people always, they play tambour, is a different instrument. And I grew up in the community, and community helped me, but I didn't have a chance to play music. And later, the private classes, I play music sometimes 18 hours. And later, yeah, I went to university, and my document, this music helped me a lot. I studied classical music, Persian classical music, and I mix both.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why maybe it's answer your question.
Sure. And then Raphael, may I ask you how you got started on the cello?
It was pretty simple, really. I got asked when I was probably about 9 if I wanted to take piano lessons, if I was interested in that, and I said, no, I want to do cello, because it's not what every kid starts on. So I just got started with that, and I think as the years progressed, I just got more interested in it, and I was in a more stimulating environment, and every time I moved into a new environment, I kind of discovered a new world around the cello and realized, oh, you can do this, okay, and then I tried to follow that, and it just kind of led me on to all these weird places.
Very cool. So we want to hear you play maybe just a little bit more, but before we do that, can I just check in and see if there are any questions from anybody that, yes, ma'am. Oh. So, exactly. So the question is the bow, the hair is not tight like it is on a Western instrument. Can you talk to us a little bit about the bow hair?
Okay, the bow hair is connected to the instrument, because when I play the instrument, is instrument turning around, turn to left, right, and in the middle. And I keep just play a bow, and with my fingers, and push a bow on strings. And that's why we use a loose bow. If you tighten it, you can play it, in this way.
I see. And so there's a little mechanism that you're actually adjusting.
Yeah, mechanism is just your hands, see, like, now it's loose. You tighten, and
there's a little piece of metal, and he's actually changing it to change colors. And
it has a
sound.
little bit belt. Yeah, it's a belt, a small belt.
Yeah.
Watch belt.
Yeah. Very
Watch band. Yeah.
Wow. Super cool.
Yeah.
Other questions? All right. Would you guys play something else for us as we... Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being part of our family this year. We are so excited to present this concert to you this evening. Would you put your hands together one more time for Kamancello? Thank you. And thank you all very much. See you in a half an hour.